My family thinks the local police will always protect them. They haven't met the federal agents building cases across 4 states. In my family, the men expected one daughter from each generation to live in our soundproof basement as the family punching bag. My grandfather built the room himself in 1962. He'd grown up watching his father hit his mother unconscious, watching his brothers terrorize their wives. So he invented what he called the feminist solution. One girl, chosen at 16, would absorb all the family's violence. The chosen one wore a locked silver anklet and lived in that basement 24/7. Whenever someone felt angry, stressed, or cruel, they had a designated target. My grandfather genuinely believed this protected other women in the family from random violence. 3 generations of men had grown up with this system. My father, my uncles, my older cousins, they'd all been taught from childhood that the basement girl existed for their anger. They'd accompany their fathers downstairs, learning which strikes left marks and which didn't. By adolescence, they had their own keys, and I would have called the police, but they scared me out of it. Instead of hearing bedtime stories as a child, they'd tell me stories about the foster care system, about how if I called the police, I'd end up there, where they'd rape me to death. And it's not like the women didn't participate in the feminist solution either. My grandmother selected the victims. My mother prepared the ankle ceremonies. My aunts delivered the meals through the slot, telling younger girls this was an honor and a necessity. They believed it. Without the anger room, they said, imagine how much worse things would be. I was 8 when my Aunt Sophia was chosen. I watched them lead her to the basement on her 16th birthday, watched her parents hand over their own daughter like a sacrifice. The tradition was specific. The girl served from age 16 until death or incapacitation. Then the next was chosen immediately. No gaps allowed. My grandmother kept meticulous records. Which girl served when, for how long, their performance ratings. She showed me once, proud of the organization. When I was 13, my Aunt Sophia was replaced with Elena. Every morning, my uncle visited before work. Wednesdays were my father's scheduled time. Weekends belonged to my grandfather. The women visited too, though less frequently. All the family's frustrations funneled into that room. It was around this time that I was finally smart enough to find something that changed everything. The heating vents connected every room in the house, and through them, I realized I could hear Elena begging. I heard the scheduled visits. I heard my grandmother explaining to my 9-year-old cousin Maya that she might be blessed with selection one day. That's when I started recording everything. 6 months of evidence hidden in the vents. I recruited 8 younger cousins who didn't want to be chosen. Nina mapped the ventilation system. Vera learned to pick locks. We dropped medical supplies to Elena and documented her injuries through the grates. The breaking point came at our annual Christmas dinner. My grandmother stood with the ceremonial selection bell. Elena had served well, she announced while pointing out her multiple severe injuries. It was time to choose her replacement. Her eyes settled on 9-year-old Maya, who smiled back, not understanding. I stood up and played 6 months of recordings through hidden speakers. The room erupted, but while family members screamed and tried to stop me, Vera had already called 911. The other girls formed a protective circle as evidence flooded the room. Audio of beatings, photos of the room, documentation going back decades. My family couldn't believe I'd betray the feminist solution. Even as police led them away, they insisted this system prevented worse violence. My grandmother kept repeating, we were protecting the family. One sacrifice to save many. But they'd been so confident in their tradition, so certain of their righteousness, they never imagined anyone would defy it. They fought until the end, hiring lawyers, claiming religious freedom, insisting the chosen girls volunteered. The arrests were quick and quiet. 17 family members were charged. That's when I truly realized how messed up our tradition really was. My family hired the best lawyers money could buy. 3 weeks later, we were in court. The judge reviewed all our evidence. Then he looked up with dead eyes. Case dismissed, he said. I saw it then. The scar on his wrist. The same mark all the men in my family wore. The scar caught the light as Judge Harrison gathered his papers. My hands shook as I watched him stand, watched my family members embrace their lawyers with relief flooding their faces. Elena swayed on her feet in the witness chair, her medical records scattered across the prosecutor's table like discarded trash. I grabbed the prosecutor's arm as he packed his briefcase. He yanked away without meeting my eyes, muttering something about jurisdiction issues. The bailiff ushered us toward the exit while my grandmother smiled triumphantly from across the courtroom. My father clapped my uncle's shoulder, both men already pulling out their phones. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around my family's legal team. I heard fragments of their statement about false accusations and troubled youth seeking attention. My cousins huddled near me, Nina's small hand gripping mine so tight her nails left marks. Vera kept glancing at the courthouse doors like she expected police to burst through and fix this impossible reversal. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed with photos from my aunt's social media. My entire family celebrated at Marcello's, their favorite Italian restaurant. Champagne glasses raised, my grandfather's arm around Judge Harrison's shoulders. The judge's silver bracelet glinted next to my grandfather's matching one. The caption read, "Justice prevails. Family stays strong." Elena collapsed in my apartment bathroom that night. The paramedics said her blood pressure had spiked dangerously high. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, she kept whispering about going back to the room, about how they'd make her pay for speaking up. I rode with her to the hospital, holding her hand while she drifted in and out of consciousness. The next morning brought 23 missed calls from unknown numbers. The first voicemail was just breathing. The second contained whispers about keeping family business private. By the 5th message, the voice clearly stated that some girls never learn their lessons. I changed my phone number that afternoon. 2 days passed in a blur of hospital visits and locked doors. Elena stabilized but refused to eat, convinced they'd poison her food. The younger cousin's parents had already started pulling them out of school, claiming family emergencies. Vera's mother showed up at my apartment demanding I stop filling her daughter's head with lies. The package arrived on the 3rd morning. No return address, just my name printed in block letters. Inside, photocopied bank statements spilled across my kitchen table. Monthly transfers from my grandfather's business account to Harrison Financial Consulting. 15 years of payments, always the same amount, always on the 1st of each month. Beneath the statements were photographs. Judge Harrison at my cousin's baptism wearing the ceremonial silver bracelet reserved for interfamily. Harrison at my grandfather's 70th birthday, standing among the men who had keys to the basement. Harrison's signature on court documents dismissing 3 other cases my family had faced over the years. I drove straight to the district attorney's office. The secretary looked up from her desk, her fingers pausing over her keyboard. When I explained why I needed to see the DA urgently, she smiled apologetically. He was out of town indefinitely, she said. Family emergency. As she reached for her appointment book, her sleeve rode up. A thin silver chain circled her wrist, delicate but unmistakable. I backed out of the office, my evidence clutched against my chest. In the parking lot, my hands shook too badly to unlock my car. A security guard approached, asking if I needed assistance. His concerned expression seemed genuine until I noticed the silver tie clip shaped like our family crest. That night, my apartment windows shattered while I was at work. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, called to report the break-in, her voice trembling as she described the glass covering my living room floor. Nothing was stolen, but someone had left a photo on my coffee table. Elena in her hospital bed, taken from outside her room window. Nina called that evening, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Her parents were sending her to live with our grandparents permanently. They said she needed discipline, needed to understand her place in the family structure. She begged me to help, but the line went dead before I could respond. When I called back, the number was disconnected. Vera's family moved her across state state lines within 48 hours. Her last text simply said they were transferring her father's job immediately. No forwarding address, no way to contact her. The other cousins who'd helped me went silent one by one, their social media accounts deactivated, their phones disconnected. My bank called about suspicious activity on my accounts. Someone had reported potential fraud, triggering a freeze on all my assets. The investigation would take weeks, they explained, apologizing for the inconvenience. My credit card stopped working that same afternoon. Work became impossible when my supervisor called me in for a meeting. Anonymous complaints had flooded their inbox about my performance, my attitude, my reliability. The accusations were vague, but numerous enough to warrant suspension pending a full investigation. My supervisor seemed embarrassed, but insisted protocol had to be followed. With no money and no job, I called my friend Melissa. We'd known each other since college, and she'd always said her door was open. Her father Brian answered when I knocked, a solid man with sharp eyes who listened to my rushed explanation without interrupting. He guided me inside where Melissa wrapped me in a fierce hug. Brian Miller had been a private investigator for 30 years before retirement. He poured coffee while I spread my evidence across his dining table, his expression growing darker with each document. When I finished explaining, he pulled out a yellow legal pad and began making notes. This isn't the first time I've seen something like this, he said quietly. Never this organized, but the patterns are familiar. He disappeared into his home office, returning with boxes of old case files. Together we spent hours cross-referencing names and dates. Judge Harrison's name appeared repeatedly, always dismissing cases involving prominent families, always with sealed